I want you to imagine a sport for a second. A sport that routinely subjects your spine to compressive forces of up to 6 to 8 times your body weight.
Which is massive.
Right. And it does this in a fraction of a second, just over and over again. Honestly, it sounds like we're talking about extreme weightlifting.
Or maybe getting tackled in professional rugby.
Exactly, rugby. But we aren't. We are talking about your typical everyday golf swing.
It really, it completely shatters the illusion of what happens on the tee box. We are just so conditioned to view golf as this gentle, leisurely stroll on the grass.
Yeah, totally.
But on a mechanical level, it is a violent, high-velocity, high-torque athletic event.
It really is. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is to decode the true biomechanics of the golf swing. We're pulling together a huge stack of insights from PGA professionals, sports scientists, and, elite biomechanics testing.
All to figure out what actually happens when you swing a club.
Right.
And the goal today is clarity. We aren't here to drown you in a bunch of contradictory swing theories.
There are plenty of those out there.
Oh, thousands. We want to break down the actual mechanics so you can finally understand the root cause of that nagging lower back pain, why your ball isn't going as far as you think it should, and how you can build a powerful, pain-free swing from the ground up.
Because the back pain issue is an absolute epidemic. I mean, looking at the sources, up to 28.1% of all golfers experience lower back pain after every single round.
Every single round. Let that sink in.
And it's not just weekend warriors with bad form either. This affects roughly 40 to 58% of all elite competitive tour athletes.
Yeah, it is hands down the leading musculoskeletal injury in the sport. When you consider the sheer volume of swings an avid player takes.
Over 50 full-intensity swings in a round alone.
Right, plus maybe a few hundred during a driving range session. You are looking at massive exposure to tissue microtrauma if the body isn't moving correctly.
So what does this all mean? Like, why does a sport that looks so relaxed cause so much structural damage to the body?
Well, it really comes down to a fundamental conflict between human anatomy and the demands of generating clubhead speed.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
So, a modern golf swing requires massive rotational mobility. You have to turn your body significantly to build power, right? But your lumbar spine, your lower back, it is simply not built to twist.
Let's visualize that for the listener. How is the lower back actually designed to move?
Think of the joints in your lower back like a standard door hinge.
Okay, a hinge?
Biomechanists call this moving in the sagittal plane. Those joints are designed beautifully for bending straight forward and arching backward.
But not twisting.
Exactly. Because of how they interlock, they allow for almost zero high-velocity rotation. They're built for stability, not twisting.
Okay, so if the lower back is basically a locked door hinge when it comes to rotation, where is all that twisting supposed to come from?
It should be coming from your hips. Hips are ball and socket joints, so they're designed to rotate freely. And also your thoracic spine, which is your mid-back. What's fascinating here is that the human nervous system is an absolute master of compensation.
Meaning it finds a way to get the job done no matter what.
Precisely. If your hips or your mid-back lack mobility, your brain still tries to complete the golf swing you're asking for, so it forces your lower back to compensate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, your lumbar spine ends up absorbing rotational torque it was never meant to handle. That's what tears away at the discs and strains the muscles.
Then a massive reason we lack that required mobility in our hips and mid-back is just modern life, right? The whole desk jockey problem.
Well, absolutely.
So many of us go straight from sitting hunched over a laptop or sitting in traffic directly to the first tee. And sitting all day causes, well, the sources call it lower cross syndrome.
Right, where your glutes and your abs essentially turn off. They become weak.
And your hip flexors and lower back muscles get incredibly tight and short.
Yeah, and that imbalance physically pulls your pelvis out of alignment. It creates an anterior pelvic tilt.
So, if you imagine your pelvis as a bucket of water, an anterior tilt means the bucket is spilling water out the front. You're sticking your tailbone out and heavily arching your lower back at setup.
Perfect analogy. In the golf coaching world, we call this S posture.
And starting in S posture sets off just a terrible chain reaction. You are essentially pre-stressing your spine before you even take the club back.
Exactly, because that tucked forward pelvis physically locks up your hip joints. You literally can't rotate your hips in the backswing.
But your brain still wants to get the club to the top.
Right. So to complete the motion, you end up excessively extending your spine, leaning backward toward the target at the top of your swing. This creates the dreaded reverse spine angle.
Oh, I've seen that on the range constantly. The player looks like a reverse C at the top of their swing.
Yeah, it's very common.
And then to actually hit the ball from that awkward position, they have to rapidly crunch downward and violently side bend toward their trail side during the downswing.
Which is pretty much the worst possible movement for human anatomy.
It sounds painful just talking about it.
It is. You are combining heavy compression with a rapid twisting side bend right on those vulnerable lumbar discs. Honestly, it's a miracle more golfers aren't injured.
This brings us to the core tension of the modern golf swing. How do we generate maximum power without relying on a move that wrecks our spine?
Right, that's the million-dollar question.
A lot of it relies on creating a differential between the upper and lower body. Biomechanists call this the X factor.
Yep, the X factor.
It's the mathematical difference between your shoulder rotation and your hip rotation. In an elite modern swing, the player restricts their pelvic turn to about 40 to 50 degrees, while their shoulders keep turning to about 90 or 100 degrees.
You are intentionally creating separation between the upper and lower body to preload the trunk musculature.
Think of wringing out a wet towel. If you hold a towel and twist both ends at the same time in the same direction, it just flops around.
Right, no tension at all.
Exactly. But if you hold one end perfectly still, like your lower body, and heavily twist the other end, your torso, you create maximum tension right in the middle.
That's the perfect visualization. You are stretching the muscles and fascia to store elastic energy. In sports science, this is known as the stress shortening cycle.
But wait, I have to push back here for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
If we are intentionally restricting our hips to build all this tension, doesn't that make the downswing entirely an upper body arm-driven motion? Like if you uncoil that tension violently, how does that not just rip the back muscles apart?
That is the crucial trap so many amateurs fall into.
Okay.
They think the power comes from violently uncoiling their upper body, but the actual power to release that stored elastic energy safely does not come from your back or your shoulders. It comes from the ground.
Wait, from the ground?
Yes.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's talk about ground reaction forces, or GRF. It's basically Newton's third law in action, right?
Exactly. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
So if you push aggressively down into the turf doesn't just sit there. It pushes back up into your body with the exact same amount of force.
And elite golfers are absolute masters at harnessing that pushback. When biomechanists put tour pros on force plates.
Those are the scales that measure pressure in every direction, right?
Yeah, exactly. They see a very specific pattern. They call it the power trifecta. Elite players use 3 specific ground forces in a strict sequence to generate that seemingly effortless speed.
Okay, let's break those down. First is lateral force.
Right, the shift. Very early in the downswing, actually just before the backswing even finishes, pressure shifts from the trail foot over to the lead foot.
And the second is rotational force, often called brake or torque. And this isn't just turning your hips, is it?
No, not at all. It's a specific interaction with the ground. You feel like you are literally screwing your lead foot into the turf. You're trying to twist your forefoot toward the target while your heel resists.
Right, that creates a massive pivot point to help clear the hips out of the way.
Exactly. Then comes the third, and often most powerful force, vertical force, the press.
The press.
With pressure loaded heavily into that lead side, you push aggressively down into the lead leg, almost like you're trying to jump off the ground.
Which drives your lead hip upward and backward. You'll hear coaches call this posting up.
Posting up, yeah. But just generating these forces isn't enough on its own. The sequencing is absolutely non-negotiable.
Kinematic sequencing.
Yes, the kinetic energy has to travel in a strict order. Legs first, then hips, then torso, then arms, then hands, and finally the club.
And if you break that chain...
If your arms fire before your hips or your torso spins before you shift your weight, you leak massive amounts of speed. Even worse, your lower back has to step in to muscle the club through the impact zone.
Which naturally leads us to the most common breakdowns we see on the golf course when people fail to sequence those forces. Let's talk about the big one, early extension.
Oh, early extension, the classic.
Yeah, this plagues amateurs, myself included sometimes, honestly. This happens when your pelvis thrusts forward, moving closer to the golf ball during the downswing.
Think about the geometry of that. If your hips thrust forward toward the ball, they are suddenly occupying the exact space your arms need to swing through.
Right, they block the path.
Exactly. So your brain panics. It realizes that if you stay in your posture, you're going to completely miss the ball or, bury the club into the dirt.
So it forces you to stand up out of your posture and sort of cast the club with your hands just to make contact.
It completely ruins your strike. I mean, early extension results in those block shots way out to the right, sweeping hooks to the left, and those agonizingly fat shots where you hit the ground a foot behind the ball.
And it all happens because the golfer failed to use rotational and vertical ground forces to push their lead hit backward and out of the way.
Yep. Another massive mistake is confusing swaying with proper loading.
Oh, swaying. Amateurs know they need a weight shift, so they just sway their entire body off the ball.
Yeah, let's use a doorway analogy to clear this up. Swaying is like sliding your whole body laterally through a doorway.
Okay.
Loading, on the other hand, is like standing in the doorway and pushing your hand as hard as you can against the doorframe. The pressure and force are absolutely there, but your center of mass doesn't slide laterally past the frame.
That brace is everything. If your trail knee straightens completely or bows outward during the backswing, you've slid through the doorway. You are swaying.
You've lost the brace, and you've dissipated all that stored energy before the downswing even starts.
But perhaps the most damaging misconception, the biggest myth we really need to bust today, is how people view the hips themselves.
The idea that the hips are the engine of the swing.
Yeah. Golfers are constantly told by their buddies on the course to fire their hips or, spin their hips as fast as they can to generate power.
Well, the biomechanics data is definitive on this. Violently spinning your hips flat actually robs the club of speed.
That feels entirely backwards. Like, how does moving your hips slower make the club go faster?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about throwing a baseball or even throwing a punch. The human body generates peak velocity at the end of a kinetic chain through a process called sequential deceleration.
Sequential deceleration.
Right. Your hips are actually a brake, not a motor.
A break.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a total paradigm shift.
Think of a baseball pitcher striding down the mound. When their front foot lands, that front leg posts up and hits the brakes. It violently stops the forward motion of the pelvis.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Because the lower body suddenly decelerates, all that momentum transfers up into the torso, which accelerates rapidly. Then the torso hits the brakes, passing the energy to the arms.
And then the arms decelerate, whipping the energy into the wrist and finally the baseball.
Exactly. It creates a massive slingshot effect.
So in golf, if you just spin your hips continuously without ever bracing and hitting the brakes with your lead leg, the kinetic energy never transfers up the chain to your torso and arms.
It just bleeds out. You end up dragging the club across the ball with a weak, glancing blow.
Okay, let's unpack this. Understanding the physics of a slingshot is great, but how do you actually train your body to feel this sequential deceleration? How do we fix the body to fix the swing?
We've got some incredibly practical drills for that.
Let's start with fixing that early extension.
The best starting point is the wall drill. You can do this at home without a club. Just cross your arms across your chest and take your golf posture with your glutes barely touching a wall behind you.
Okay.
In your backswing, your trail glute should press firmly into the wall. As you transition to the downswing, you maintain that contact, and then your laid glute must press into the wall as you rotate through impact.
So the physical feedback is immediate. If your pelvis thrusts toward the imaginary golf ball, your backside leaves the wall.
Exactly. The key takeaway is that your hips should always feel like they are moving away from the golf ball during the swing, clearing space for your arms.
What about mastering that vertical force, the jump that powers the slingshot?
For that, you want the stomp and turn drill. Take your normal backswing and literally pause at the top. Stop completely.
Just freeze.
Yeah, freeze.
Yeah.
Your very first move down shouldn't be with your arms. It should be physically stomping your lead foot into the ground. And only then do you allow your body to rotate.
That stomp forces you to build vertical ground reaction force first. It rewires the brain to understand that the downward push into the turf is what triggers the rotation.
Spot on.
I also love the medicine ball drill for this. It really isolates the lower body mechanics without the distraction of trying to hit a golf ball.
Yeah, that one is great.
You kneel on the ground, trail knee down, lead foot planted flat in front of you. You hold a medicine ball at your chest. You want to throw the ball forward against a wall, but here is the catch. You don't use your arms.
Right. You use your lead foot. You push the ground aggressively forward toward the wall.
Because of Newton's third law, pushing the ground forward forces your torso and hips violently backward.
It feels incredibly awkward the first time you do it.
Oh, definitely. But it perfectly mimics how the lead leg is supposed to hit the brakes and clear the hips in a real golf swing. You push the ground forward and away, so your hip snaps backward and out of the way.
And as you practice these drills, it's vital to discover your natural kinetic preference. Biomechanists have found that not all golfers use the ground the same way. You need to know what kind of leg golfer you are.
This was one of the most fascinating concepts in the research. Tell us about the three types.
Well, you might be a back leg golfer. This is a player who generates force primarily by driving off their trail leg, much like a baseball slugger pushing off their back foot to hit a home run.
Okay, that makes sense.
Or you might be a front leg golfer. These players naturally prefer to pull their weight into their lead leg early and jump off it, kind of like a basketball player launching off their front foot for a layup.
Like Justin Thomas, right?
Exactly. Justin Thomas is a great example of this. He gets so much vertical force off his lead leg, he often leaves the ground completely. And finally, you might be a double leg golfer who loads and uses both legs relatively evenly.
Knowing your natural kinetic preference completely changes your coaching cues. If you are naturally a back leg golfer, but you're trying to force a massive front leg jump because you saw it on YouTube, your timing will be completely destroyed.
And honestly, none of these kinetic drills matter if your body physically cannot get into the required positions.
The mobility issue again.
Right. If you are locked up from sitting at a desk and you cannot physically perform a deep hip flexion, your brain is too smart to let you swing freely. It senses the structural instability.
It realizes the joint can't handle the rotation.
Exactly. So it hits the neurological brakes long before impact to protect you from injury.
That means physical conditioning, doing your 90-90 hip stretches, glute bridges, and planks isn't just about general fitness. It is mandatory maintenance. If your hips don't move, your back will, and we know how that story ends.
Right. So to summarize the core lessons here, true, effortless power does not come from swinging your arms harder. It doesn't come from violently spinning your hips open like a motor either. It comes from maintaining a neutral pelvic tilt, having the necessary mobility in your hips and mid-back, and efficiently pushing into the ground to create a sequence of deceleration that slingshots the club head through the ball.
And the practical payoff for you, the listener, is huge. Yes, by fixing these movement patterns, you are going to optimize your kinematic sequence and add significant ball speed and distance.
Absolutely.
But far more importantly, you are actively removing the micro-traumas, the shear forces, and the compressive loads that cause debilitating lower back pain. You are bulletproofing your body to play this game pain-free for decades.
Which brings us to a final, really provocative thought to leave you with, straight from the sports science data.
Oh, I love this part.
We always assume that as we age, we lose distance because our muscles are just getting older and weaker. But what if that loss of distance is actually a neurological protective mechanism?
It's a fascinating area of research regarding proprioception, isn't it?
Yeah. Proprioception is your body's ability to sense its movement and location in space. Let's say you have a joint issue or you've had a hip replacement. The orthopedic surgeon will tell you the mechanical structure of the titanium joint is perfectly sound. It can handle a full golf swing.
But your brain still restricts your swing speed. Why?
Because you've lost the sensory feedback of the original hip capsule. The nerve endings aren't sending the same signals. Your brain lacks proprioception in that joint. It literally doesn't feel safe, so it acts like a governor on an engine and puts the brakes on your rotation to prevent a catastrophic injury.
Meaning the physical hardware might be perfectly capable of hitting a 280-yard drive, but the software running the hardware is executing a protection protocol.
Exactly. Retraining your nervous system to feel safe under load, rebuilding that sensory feedback, might be the true frontier of unlocking golf longevity.
It all cycles back to that incredible visual we started with. A typical golf swing puts 6 to 8 times your body weight of compressive force on your spine in a fraction of a second.
Yeah. If you don't train your brain to use the ground and your hips to absorb that kinetic energy safely, your lower back will be forced to do it.
And your lower back makes for a terrible power lifter.
It really does.
If you enjoyed today's deep dive, please subscribe to our channel and share it with fellow golfers, coaches, and PGA professionals. If there is a topic you would like us to research, analyze, and discuss in a future deep dive, feel free to send us an email or connect with us through LinkedIn. Whether your interest is golf biomechanics, kinematics, ground reaction forces, swing mechanics, putting, coaching, club fitting technology, or sports science, we would love to hear from you. Our team will review your submission, conduct extensive research, analyze the available evidence, and may create a dedicated deep dive, article, video, or testing project based on your topic. Thank you for being part of the eCoach 360-degree community.